Bosses in video games are they themselves a form of art. They require a certain balance of charm, mechanics, memorability, and at the same time they need to be fun to deal with. Boss fights are there to test the player's abilities to grasp the mechanics of the game, whether it be as simple as the typing system in Pokemon, or the complexity of real-time combat in Metroid Dread. Boss fights are a delicate balance, and even more so when it comes to their story and thematic undertones. A while back I talked about Metal Gear Rising, a video game that I adore, from its music to its mechanics, to its presentation and so on and so forth. But I felt as though I didn't really do justice to the game's bosses. Well, I'm fixing that mistake now. This is a video that will talk about the bosses of Metal Gear Rising in more depth, at least the more character-based ones. As much as I like Metal Gear Ray, the boss is more or less used to establish the action of the game as well as have a great set piece to hook the players into fast and furious slicing action. But I will explain why in its own section. I will not be talking about Blade Wolf because I want to save his character for something different down the line. I'm MangaKamen, and thank you for joining me on this analysis of the Winds of Destruction. Also, spoilers. Duh. I think it's important to establish something about the Metal Gear series as a whole. At least in my experience, the boss fights in any Metal Gear Solid game were the highlights of the game. Now granted, depending on which game and what controls you're rocking, you may disagree, but there have been plenty of videos talking about how the end from Metal Gear Solid 3 is the greatest boss fight in video game history. I think that's a little over the top, but I'd be lying if he wasn't a pretty dynamic one. Hard to sneeze at a boss that you can take out in multiple different ways, including just messing with the clock in your game's system.
Listen to yourself. This is a mission. It's not a game, it's not a sport.
Oh, shut up!
But here's the thing. Depending on who you ask, the bosses of these games are a lot deeper than people give credit to, Rising included. Desperado's executives, the Winds of Destruction, are a key factor to this. From their namesakes to musical themes to dialogue and backstory, the Winds of Destruction have a unique trait that make them stand out from each other, but still hold them in a thematic sense. You need only look at their color schemes of red, black, and deep metal colors, which is obvious if you look at them and how they're part of a major corporation, but it works well and they act as a very good contrast to Raiden himself, whose major color in this game is blue and black. Well, save for...
Now you're just being nasty.
But you get the point. In addition, they act as a good opposition for Raiden, not just with fighting, but also story-wise and even their names. Like, the Winds of Destruction are named after cultural winds, and Raiden is...
Mr. Lightning Bolt.
The fuck you say to me, you little shit!
The cybernetically enhanced humans are much more dangerous than the giant machines, and this is demonstrated with the fight with Metal Gear Ray. In 2018 of the Metal Gear universe, war has changed. Again, with the advent of cybernetic augmentation of human abilities, they improved the soldiers. Reflexes, replacing lost limbs, reaction time, and improved range of motion, they have effectively changed the tide of combat. Give these soldiers more powerful weapons and the proper training, and you've found your answer to Grandin's dilemma. And if you don't know, Grandin is the real mastermind between Metal Gear, as established in Metal Gear Solid 3.
Tank does not need a rocket. It needs something else. Look at these.
Nice shoes.
No. Legs. Legs that allow it to go anywhere. Just as when humans learn to walk upright. That is the real revolution in weaponry. Don't you agree?
The all-terrain potential of infantry with the destructive power of artillery. That is the evolution of combat.
Swinging wide open!
And that is what Metal Gear Ray's boss fight represents in that regard, the evolution of combat in the Metal Gear universe. Considering the times where you actually do fight against Metal Gears in the Solid series, in those games you're forced to fight them with more meager weapons like rocket launchers, or to use your own Metal Gear to fight them. But in Metal Gear Rising, Raiden is capable of fighting this huge monstrosity like it's nothing. The same with Jetstream Sam in the DLC. This is actually highlighted very well in the song Rules of Nature. If you can stop headbanging for a few seconds and listen to the lyrics, you'll hear stuff like this. Metal Gear Ray is a relic of the past in Rising. It's merely being used as a means to delay Raiden from chasing after Sundowner after he kidnaps a high-ranking official in Africa. Times have changed. The Metal Gear is officially an obsolete weapon. It's a matter of survival of the fittest, Darwin's theory of evolution. In a sense, Metal Gear Ray is passing of the torch on the battlefield. And it's something that actually has parallel to the actual real world of combat, evolution. Blunt objects gave way to swords, swords gave way to guns, and guns have way more technological advances in modern warfare, such as... That to me is why Metal Gear Ray is probably the best way to start off the game, to show the player that the giant mechs of previous Metal Gears aren't the real threat, but rather, it's the soldiers. They are the focus. They are the ones that steal the show. Now, like I said, I would talk about Blade Wolf, but I'd like to focus more on the human characters instead, since that's more of a point of this video, and I like to think that I did a decent job with Wolf's themes in the video that I put out a while ago. If not, hey, I could always make another video, that's the point of this channel. But for now, Mistral. The northern cold winds, more specifically the cold northern winds in the French Alps. She is a French-Algerian orphan who shares a similar origin to that of Raiden's childhood. Orphan thanks to the Algerian War of 1990s, she sought her parents' killers.
But I butchered those fuckers.
Because of that, Mistral found her calling. She was always good at killing. Still, even though she was good at it, she still questions why she would fight for a cause when she really didn't have a choice. At least until...
And then, I met him.
The battle with Mistral is a battle of identity, as even her music can attest to that.
Finally found what I was looking for. A place where I can be without remorse. Because I am a stranger who has found an even stranger war. I finally found what I was looking for.
Its lyrics talk about a constant stranger who can only be considered the battlefield as her home, and later on this will also go to reflect when Raiden as becomes more accepting of his own past and uses it to fulfill his goals. Pardon me if I butcher this name, because for some reason whenever I talk about foreign names I can't help but butcher them myself. L'étranger, or the stranger, is the weapon of choice of this deadly woman, which is confirmed reference to Albert Camus's book with the same name, which for those who don't know, it is a story about a French-Algerian man named Merosot. If you want a small synopsis for the book, spoilers I guess. Merosot in his journey of a killing person, the before and after, his emotions being shown to the world as he wonders about his own existence, future. I don't know, I haven't read it fully, so maybe there's a lot more symbolism in comparison, but from what I understand there's a bit of a reference to the benign indifference of the universe, where Mistral was pretty much killing for no good reason, at least until she met Stephen Armstrong, who gave her life purpose. After her defeat, she realized what it was like to die for a cause and expressed her wish towards someone to continue to fight for her belief that he wouldn't fall, that he wouldn't fail. And her final words, I think what I find most interesting about Mistral is the parallels to Raiden. A good boss should have some sort of connection to the main characters, especially when there's so few bosses in Metal Gear Rising. Considering the fact there really isn't a personal connection, save for the two, there needs to be another one. A connection between both the player character and the boss helps incite a bit of tension between them. In Mistral's case, it's the similar past that she and Raiden had, child soldiers, and how if things turned out differently, Raiden could have been on the same path as Mistral. And later on, when Jack the Ripper appears, Mistral wasn't too far off. They are more similar than she first thought. Monsoon, named after the eastern wet storms, more specifically the southeastern Asian variety. He is a Phnom Penh war survivor with Cambodian origins, having survived the Cambodian genocide and eventually becoming a gang member that had ties to human trafficking and drug trades. Monsoon's philosophy is one of nihilism, the rejection of all moral principles, and the belief that life is meaningless, a philosophy carved into his body, as stated when he claims,
Parent, but an effective teacher. Its final lesson is carved deep in my psyche. This world and all its people are diseased. Free will is a myth. Religion is a joke. It's controlled by something greater. Memes. The DNA of the soul.
People often like to make jokes at the language that Monsoon says.
Memes. The DNA of the soul.
But there is a lot of truth to that. There's a phrase that's uttered that if you say a lie enough times, it becomes the truth. In a sense, that's the same with memes. Richard Dawkins, a world-renowned biologist, coined the term in his 1976 book, The Selfish Gene. To give a simplified explanation, a meme is essentially a unit of cultural evolution, an idea, a concept. They are essentially the DNA of the soul, and really, if you want a more simplified version than that...
Expose someone to anger long enough, they'll learn to hate. They become a carrier. Envy, greed, despair, all means won't last long.
Hate leads to hate, and it's a sad aspect of our modern-day internet culture that we're seeing this happen right before our very eyes. And yet people turn their gaze away. They don't see it. Monsoon's nihilism can even be attributed to his design. One of the most defining features of Monsoon is his segmented body. His cyborg body is probably the most unique out of all the other bosses in the game, let alone cyborgs. Going so far to further segment his body kind of speaks to me that he doesn't really value the aspect of humanity, even his own humanity. After all, in the grand scheme of things, he's just a man. A single solitary person who's nothing more than a tool. A weapon of war to be thrown away. Why should he care about his body status? So long as it allows him to fight, survive, and kill his opponents, that's all that matters. I feel The Stains of Time really indicates this notion, as it's a song that talks about nature running its course, using rain to an attempt to wash away the anger of a man's soul.
Wash away the anger. Here I stand beneath the warm and soothing rain. The droplets falling gently down on the terrain. Wash away the sorrow, all the stains of time. But there's no memory, it's only dry inside.
But it's useless. Monsoon is a man who gave up his hope, his humanity, things that make him human.
In the mud and sinking deeper into a peaceful life.
And when that realization sets in,
And it will come like a flood of pain, pouring down on me. And it will not let up until the end is here. And it will come through the darkest day, in a final hour. And it will never rest until the clouds are clear. Until it finds my dreams and disappears.
just like a light sprinkling of rain warps into a violent storm in a desperate attempt to erase the man's suffering, Monsoon is a husk of a human, with no hope left within his body, so he fights, and fights, and fights. In a similar vein to Mistral's encounter was a question of Raiden's identity, Monsoon's battle is also a question to Raiden's identity. Raiden viewed himself as a protector of the weak, and that his sword is a tool of justice. Monsoon questioned the inherent nature of Raiden, that Raiden is naturally a violent individual. Gee, I wonder what gave him that idea. Well, Monsoon does get his wish. He gets to see Raiden's true nature, and after an epic fight, the Monsoon subsided, brutally murdered in a rainstorm, according to his own ideology of the strong preying on the weak. And he's actually pretty fine with that.
Kill or be killed.
Don't be ashamed. It's only nature running its course. Your means end here.
No, I passed one to you. Sure as the sun will rise, the slaughter will continue. Now, I return to the earth. Wind blows, rain falls. The strong pray,
as it should be.
All facts of life, and when you think about it, humans are actually slaves to their natures. We may fight it, but deep down we know it's true. And like he said, he passed a meme onto Raiden. The will to survive, the will to fight, and to use his past as an extension of himself.
I think it's time for Jack to let her rip.
Sundowner, dry Californian winds, and one of the more prominent characters in Metal Gear Rising. Unlike Mistral or Monsoon, Sundowner is a character that the player is introduced quite early in the game, being one of the two Winds of Destruction who appeared before Raiden and set up the events of the game, an American soldier who accepted his bloodlust and is a warmonger. After all, as he says,
Give war a chance! No!
the Californian wildfire. Which is funny because he's actually from Alabama. Which is actually telling since his name doesn't derive from his origins of location like the other two. He was named after his actions on the battlefield, that he would leave his enemies in bloody piles, their blood streaming and looking like the blazing setting sun. The invasion of Panama, the Gulf War, the Iraq War, and Afghanistan. These were all conflicts that Sundowner was a part of. Fictionally, of course. He came from a poor family and couldn't afford college, so he joined the American military, and he was good at his job, maybe a bit too much since he was investigated for war crimes. The guy obviously has a sick fascination with war and fighting. The only reason why he left the battlefield for some time was because he was hit with an IED, an improvised explosive device. It's what led him to get a cyborg body, and it's represented in his weapon, the Bloodlust. Two high-frequency machetes that combine into a scissor-like weapon, representing his demented drive for violence. If you were to look at these three Winds of Destruction, they represent parts of Raiden. Mistral was a signifier for Raiden's past, Monsoon was the delusion of Raiden's present, and Sundowner, well, he represents a possible future for Raiden. One of Sundowner's speeches alludes to how humans are naturally violent, and considering that Raiden had just accepted Jack the Ripper as his past, and is using it to fight against Desperado, it's not outside the realm of possibility that Raiden could easily slip into a similar role of Sundowner. Or could have. Red Sun. The theme for Sundowner represents this. A red sun over paradise. In Japanese culture, this phrase supposedly refers to a blood-stained night after a war, but changing the bloody moon into a red sun, a change in the world's order, humans tarnishing the natural beauty with their actions, with their fighting, with their spilled blood. To Sundowner, he believes that humans are naturally violent, and to an extent, they are. I mean, I'm not going to claim otherwise in a game where we see Raiden do this. Now, you may be wondering, he's a full-blooded American, why are you bringing up Japanese stuff? Well, if you take a look at his actual boss fight, one look at Sundowner and you'll see that his overall style of combat is that of a Japanese shogun armor. And before you fight Sundowner, you have to go through a Japanese garden inside Desperado's building. However, this to me is nothing more than a front. While Sundowner certainly isn't a pushover in the throes of battle, he has nothing more than a protective shield of how weak he truly is. Sundowner is a hypocrite, and one who will do what he can to justify his actions. He claims that he and Desperado/World Marshal are only suppliers of war. They don't create the market for the war economy, that they are only the ones who give people their weapons. But he's full of crap. Desperado's plan, under Armstrong's guidance, was to instigate a terrorist incident while the US president was in Pakistan in order to create another war on terror, creating the market for war. It's a flimsy justification. A shield, as it were.
Business ain't been the same since they shut down SOP. A clean break from the war economy. Huh. Well, some of us like that economy. How's an honest warmonger supposed to make a living?
You can even attribute that fact that he gained his wealth through the war times in order to get out of the poor state, as a means of justification for his actions. Even bloodlust, his weapons, can attribute to this. Machetes have been frequently used in bloody uprisings and revolutionary wars, and with how Sundowner's weapons can be used, they're more than likely to leave the attacked person alive, but cause them to bleed out. Fitting for a man who claims it to be in for the money, but takes obvious pleasure in the cruelty. Even when you fight against Sundowner, amongst all the winds of destruction, he's the one who fights the dirtiest. Mistral had the dwarf geckos that she ripped the arms out of to help her, and used them to distract Raiden and throw them at him for minimal damage. Monsoon, however, doesn't have many goons in his boss fight. He uses things like smoke screens and his magnetic power to throw debris at Raiden. Sundowner, he's on a different level with his underhanded tactics. His arena has attack helicopters all around it that will attack Raiden while fighting him. His shields explode if you make contact with them or cut them the wrong way. He'll summon goons to fight you. He'll resort to battlefield acquisition when the fight starts to turn against him, meaning... And when he's about to lose completely, he just goes... Fuck it! And has the helicopters attack and destroy the helipad in an attempt to kill Raiden. These are the tactics of a cowardly man. Granted, I'm not saying they're bad tactics, you know. You do what you can in order to fight and win. That being said... With an explosion to his back, like the rising or setting sun, Sundowner gets cut down. For all his dirty tricks and cruelty, a man like him loses to Raiden. Sundowner's theme is about the world being set on fire, and he's killed because an explosion propelled him towards Raiden. In a sense, Raiden slashed the possibility of becoming a man like Sundowner in half. A man who was willing to make excuses for his horrible actions. A man willing to justify his cruelty. A man willing to say that kids are naturally cruel but grow out of it. There is one thing that Sundowner was right about, though.
Kids, you can mold, manipulate into performing all kinds of atrocities. And there's nothing like a good atrocity to keep a war going.
A sad fact of our modern day world. Now we come to my favorite boss, Jetstream Sam, Samuel Rodriguez. Powerful free-roaming winds, and among the winds of destruction, Sam's the one that sticks out the most, both in design and thematics. He is the first of the winds of destruction that we, the players, and Raiden actually meets and fights, and loses. Jetstream Sam has another name, Minuano, Brazilian cool winds, and it marks the independence of the other winds of destruction. Hell, Sam isn't technically a cyborg, he only wears a cybernetic suit and has an artificial arm. If you take notice of Sam's health, he's got the lowest amount of health amongst the bosses in the game. Granted, his fight makes it a bit harder to hit him, but it's something to really consider when you take a few moments to analyze his boss fight with a critical eye. Jetstream Sam, despite his actions of killing people, doesn't use dirty tricks. He could have stopped Raiden's trek to stop Armstrong by killing everyone at the airbase, but he didn't. He waited for Raiden to come in on the stolen motorcycle to stop Raiden through an honorable duel. Fun fact, the motorcycle that Raiden stole in order to get to the airbase was actually Sam's. Funny that, huh? Sam is someone who, while he has his own morals and code, he is a man who is broken down. Before he joined World Marshal, he wasn't a man of righteous justice. He didn't fight for the weak. No, while he did pursue his own justice, he thought his blade could cut and eliminate the corruption of the world. He did it through his own Revengeance. He wandered the world fighting against criminal organizations in order to test his skills, barely taking the fight seriously, yet still managing to take down these criminals single-handedly, and he did it without taking a single blow, even from guns. Even before he became more cybernetically enhanced, as it were. In the DLC where you play as him, he was able to take down a Metal Gear Ray before he had his artificial arm, a feat that Ryan was only able to accomplish after he had gotten his own cybernetic enhancements. Sure, you could attribute the nanosuit to some of Sam's abilities, but he still had plenty of skill and swordsmanship to call his own that helped him throughout the fight. Like Raiden, Sam was fueled by revenge. His father, the master of the Rodriguez New Shadow School, was killed by one of his pupils with ties to a local drug cartel. So Sam trained and took his revenge. But he was left empty. All he had was the Muramasa, a sword left by his father to him, and his wandering soul. He only knows how to kill, not why he kills.
Sam, thanks for coming in.
What's your game, Armstrong? Gonna talk me to death?
Like I said, son, time for your final interview.
It wasn't until Armstrong and Monsoon essentially planned an interview with Sam, with Armstrong defeating him and taking his arm, that things changed for the wandering southern wind.
Not bad, son. But, like Monsoon said, losing a limb or two won't stop us.
The hell?
The job's yours. Welcome aboard.
Demoralized at his inability to defeat such a corrupted force, Sam abandoned his path of self-imposed justice. Sam believed that things like ideals had no place on the battlefield, but the strong and those who took victory had the right to claim what was and wasn't justice.
Self-taught. And not half bad. Still. Your technique lacks something.
Raiden's ideals of justice remind him of his past self, causing friction between the two, with Sam constantly mocking Raiden's pursuit of justice and protecting the weak.
Now I see. You deny your weapon its purpose.
Raiden denying his weapon its purpose. One could say that Sam saw himself in Raiden, and it got to the point that Raiden actually managed to make Sam question if Armstrong's goals and methods of creating war to end war was really the right thing to do.
2 years I've been working towards this. And on the last day, Blondie has me doubting the whole thing. We'll leave it up to fate then, shall we, Wolfie? A duel to the death. May the best man win.
Sam.
I cut him down, and that's that. Back to a regularly scheduled international incident. But if he beats me, if I die here, the lock on my blade will disable after a couple hours. What happens after that is up to you, Wolfie.
Jetstream Sam is a callback to old Western and samurai films. Duels with honorable opponents are a staple of those kinds of films. Wild West cowboys that would only get into gun duels with people they felt were skilled enough to challenge them. There wouldn't be a thrill otherwise. Hell, you only need to look at the lyrics of The Only Thing I Know for Real to see that mindset be reflected in Sam's character.
A desolate place without any trace. It's only the cold of fear. It's me that I spy as I stand up and fight. The only thing I know for real.
Heck, when you start the duel with Sam, a tumbleweed just so happens to bill past Raiden and Sam just as they're about to begin their fight. They are a staple of this kind of cinematography in duels. Along with that, you have a red and golden sunset, which got its color from high-altitude clouds and atmospheric dust, adding to the feels of this fight. And if you want to take a closer look at the Japanese side of things, there's a Shinto rivalry between the lightning and wind gods, with Sam having a reference to the winds and Raiden, well, Raiden's name is that of a Japanese god of thunder and lightning. I think you guys can put 2 and 2 together. Sam represents the loser whose defeat and service to Armstrong essentially turned him into a nihilistic international terrorist who supported world martial until his encounter with Raiden, who made him question and reaffirm his sense of ideals, identity, and motivation. Sam is another path Raiden could have taken, where he becomes a husk of his former self, having cast aside his justice to take up another's, and as such, he acts as a good foil to Raiden. The two are very similar in multiple ways, especially their fighting styles. However, Sam was someone who gave up his why to fight, and only focused on the how to kill.
Memories broken, the truth goes unspoken. I've even forgotten my name. I don't know the season or what is the reason I'm standing here holding my blade.
And if you notice that when you knock out his sword from his hands, the lyrics to his theme song will stop playing. He's not able to give his all in the fight. His identity, his life is just for him to fight in battle, and without his blade, he is unable to feel alive. Even so, unlike other bosses, Sam's fight is straightforward. It's a test of skill, not one of trickery or underhanded tactics. He fights Raiden one-on-one, a stark contrast to that of the other bosses in the game up to this point. The other most notable thing about Sam is his death. Out of all the other deaths of the bosses, his is the most honorable and humane, a stab through the torso. Despite their conflicting ideals and their opposition, Raiden refrains from cutting Sam into small pieces like he has with the other Winds of Destruction, even removing the blood from Sam's sword before sheathing it, showing Raiden had respect for the fallen warrior. Sam is probably what I consider to be a great rival in gaming, with a similar skill set to that of the player character, a connection of sorts to said character, and even allowing the character for people to respect him as a person. Jetstream Sam was a man of his own justice, beaten down by the cruelty of the world, and had given up his own sense of right and wrong when he was effectively scarred for the remainder of his life by the loss of Armstrong's overwhelming power. His is a story of a man being broken, and seeing another man who used to be like him stand up against the same forces that broke Sam. Raiden using Sam's Muramasa against Armstrong is a passing of the torch, much like with Metal Gear Ray, and where Sam surrendered his own justice, Raiden took up his own blade and defeated the man that Sam could not.
Oh, I'm not so sure. And besides, this isn't my sword. Come on! Okay. Let's dance.
I know, I'm deliberately skipping out on someone. You guys know exactly who. And if you guys want me to do it, flood this comment section with
Nanomachine Son.
give me 10,000 comments of Nanomachine Son, and I'll make a video about Senator Armstrong. I'm MangaKamen, and thanks for watching. Bye bye.